Oh boy, did I have fun making this new node that I'm going to tell you about for this video. So, for the folks that have been fans of the channel, you've seen that I've been putting out a few video updates saying that I'm sharing the demo for people to try and give feedback. And one of the most abrupt pieces of feedback I got from people was that they didn't like the controls. So I went and spent a few days setting it up so that the player from inside the game can do custom mapping and apply it to the game. So for those that are working Godot or new in Godot, it's a simple process to go over to Project, go Project Settings, and then go over to Input Map. And all of the inputs that you would like your player to be able to have access to, you can hard code those into the game. But there might be reasons why maybe someone wants to do their own mapping. They're left-handed instead of right-handed. Maybe they don't have a number pad. Maybe they prefer to do anything with a controller. So you can see I've got a lot of actions, and some of them have multiple different ways to enact them. But I'm still, I got input from the folks. I don't know what they're working with. Also, there's kind of weird stuff with different controllers between different controller companies. So that's why I set it up so that the player can go into the game, use the standard mapping, or they can go ahead and map their own stuff and mute the other existing mappings as they're playing. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this, and what we're going to be seeing is the node and the code for allowing the player to review the mapping as is, to create their own custom mapping, and to apply or revert back to the other ones. Because once you're doing custom mapping, you run the chance of having duplicates, and that's something that I like to avoid. Because if you do have duplicates, maybe someone thinks they're hitting attack, and they're actually going to be doing something else. Hopefully it doesn't mess up the video when I click away. Alright, so this is the node that I set up. I start out with a control config just to contain everything. And I've got my menu box back here. That's really just a 9-patch rect. I've got this customized one where I've got 5 or 6 different PNG or JPEG files to just change the color and the theme of the game. At the very top, I've got a VBox container, so everything is nice and orderly on the way down. And then I've just got a number of HBox containers. So this first HBox container is a drop-down menu, and that drop-down menu is just going to serve the purpose of either selecting one of the 3 standard mappings so the player can click on it and review them and see how to play the game, or if I go to number 3, it will be custom, and when it's custom, that's where the player can enter all of their own stuff for light attack, jump, run, heavy attack, defend, roll, select option 1, 2, menu, power selection, move up, move down, yada yada yada. So also in here we've got the apply button, and we've got an exit which just officially closes the node. What apply does is it starts a process where first it runs a validation to make sure that every one of these custom actions has some event that it corresponds with. Otherwise it will give you a warning and it will compile those into a list of ones that are missing. Then it'll just write it to the game after clearing the other ones. And if you're not using the custom mapping and you choose apply, they'll just revert back to the originals. So HBox container, option button, these are the 2 buttons right here. And up next you'll notice that we've got basically a repeating item. It's got the menu box and the sprite on top of it. That's just so that we've got that uniform formatting, but this isn't a button. We've got a label that says what the action is that is going to be controlled on that line. We've got a repeat of that menu box, which is a 9-patch rec to maintain the design of the layout. And then we've got all of these buttons. And so because I'm stupid and I'm not a professional programmer, I made a corresponding button for each one of the actions. You can handle that one different ways. You could have a drop down and select the action, then choose to enter the action. Or I know that I played some games historically where you just choose the option to map buttons and then it'll just run a for loop for all the actions and just have you enter them all consecutively, even if you've already done it before. But this one, because I wanted to go in and take the time, honestly, I don't even know if I did it right, I just know that I did it. Each of the actions in the game has the icon, the label, and this corresponding button, and the button text, whenever you select different options from this dropdown, will then display based on what's there. So either say whether it's a keyboard button or a controller button or something like that. And also, I've got a lookup library to show like simpler, shorter names for the items, but that's where it got kind of wonky with Godot because it's got some constants for your controller inputs that for some reason are not unique. So be careful with using those constants, but then again, you in the audience could be a better programmer than me, totally possible. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's all 14 of the actions. And then we've got this confirmation dialog box here that's just a warning for the player. And the purpose for this dude is, once again, if you're missing some of these actions, when you click apply, it's going to make sure that you know which ones to fill in. Otherwise, when you apply them, maybe you're going to be stuck in the game. You know, you're missing something, you can't do it, so I'm just trying to help make sure that you avoid it. Cool. So going to the script, excuse me, baby's a little bit sick today. We've got the code, and aside from what's commented out, 500, 365. So we got 400 or so lines of code, but some of those can be gone through pretty fast. I've just got the node itself put as a variable. I've got the drop down, the option button that's there there as a variable. This is the one where once again it's just either 0, 1, 2, or 3, and that's how you select the different layouts to view them. We've got the container itself. I've got this one as a variable probably to get the coordinates of it when something is running. So that's at this level right here. And then that first variable was in that first HBox container, the option button, which you'll see is highlighted now. Then we've got map index, which is literally just from the option button, 0, 1, 2, 3, keyboard, alt, gamepad, or custom. Then we got custom map. And what this is this is a Boolean. And what this does is it's just there to be true if you've put in a custom option for your mapping. And it stays true afterwards because at that point you still have it. I don't have it set up so you can clear it out and it goes false. You just go in and you edit it whenever you want to do something different. Next, every single button here is made into a variable. So light attack, jump, run, heavy attack, defense, roll. Select option 1, select option 2, menu, power button, up, down, left, right, and then confirm. This confirm is the dialog box right there, and its only purpose is to present you with the warning that, hey, you don't have everything mapped whenever you're trying to apply mapping. This monster right here, which we can go through very quickly, was with the help of ChatGPT. I've got an array of arrays that contains every reasonable input that the user could use to play the game. I've got a unique index column at the very beginning. I've got the corresponding constant for Godot. I've got a display name, and then I've got an equivalent input event. And the input event is what originally hits Godot whenever you're doing anything and it's listening for it. So this whole string right here is just what is one of the items that's processed either on an input or an unhandled input function that's running in the background. And what this does is I can take any permutation of a saved input or a new input coming in and strive to give you a display name. Also, if I'm doing something later on and I'm using Godot constants, or if I'm using inputs, I've got just an equivalent item across the line. I used a lot of GPT to help me use this and apply it. I'm not opposed to using it while it's free. I actually think that it's helped me out along the way, so hopefully you guys agree. I got it broken down into the standard keyboard, the numbers across the top, the buttons around the keypad, the numbers around the keyboard itself, and then the keypad buttons. And so this was the hiccup. Because I was the one that made the game, I just knew how to play it because I just kind of evolved along the way. But I got friends that don't like to play it using a keypad, or some people have the smaller keyboard on their laptop or something. They don't have a keypad. Me personally, I've got a USB connected keyboard that I use. So an unfair advantage. And then here at the bottom, this was everything I knew that I could get from gamepads, because once again, I got like this kind of crappy off-brand one. And I don't know if you're using an Xbox controller, if it's going to have anything different. So you can see I've got 100 through 113. And so the funky part is when I say that they've got constants, like this is the name that you see whenever stuff is coming in Godot. But each one of these has a numerical value, and these trigger ones, which are the second bumper buttons on the top of the controller, a couple of them have the same number behind the constant as guide. So say for instance, I might try to map R2, but then whenever it's saving it and I didn't have all this stuff to be able to connect it on either direction, it would save as guide. And so that was a little bit frustrating, but lesson learned. Now I've just got whatever shows up if you don't have something saved yet, which is unassigned. Next, the way I'm running this is I went through and I made an array that, generally speaking, all the work is done inside of this node here. And it's called buttons config. And what I've got is the name of the action in the first column of this array of libraries. So player 1 attack, player 1 jump, run, strong, attack, move, all that stuff. I've got the button node that when you click on the button, it will say, hey, I'd like to go ahead and create this input. And now I've got all of the standard mappings that I already have done in the game. And the reason being is when you apply the custom mapping, I tell Godot to delete any other previously existing mapping so that there's not a chance for a duplicate occurrence. Like basically, if I've got one of these existing mappings, say I've got W set up as move up, it sounds like, I want W to be attack in option 3. If I've got it both as up and something else, I don't know whether it's just going to crap its pants and stop, or if it's just going to do both at the same time. But I just figured for a clean house, we've got number 3, which is for all the custom stuff, and right now it's all null because when you start the game, these are the ones that are applied. And this is where you're going to save your own stuff. And I manually went through or matched that stuff ahead of time. Finally, I've got waiting for input, which is this bool right here. And what that is saying that whenever you click that button and there's those constant functions running in the background, this bool is going to tell unhandled input to start paying attention for what's coming in. If this is false, it just does a return and then it just keeps cycling through. But whenever you click one of these bad boys and say I'd like to do a mapping for run, then this is true and it does not exit out of unhandled input very quickly. Current button is just identifying the button node that you are currently trying to create a new value for, and then ultimately where inside of the array it's going to be. And current index is just the value of the option button. So if we're taking a look at 0, standard keyboard, 1, the other keyboard layout, 2, standard joypad, and then 3, seeing the custom. So on ready, and this is where it gets a little bit funky because I also set it up so that when you save the game, it saves that file. Like that'll be a different video, but because this is not a global singleton, right now, whenever you're done, the node goes away and these values go away. So you might apply it into the game, but if you were to exit out of this from the menu the way it's written prior to that step of writing to global config, this would go away, and then you have mappings and you wouldn't know what they were. So this first function is basically saying, okay, I'm going to read from global config, and if there's already existing custom values, I'm going to go ahead and grab those ones. That way later in the game, whenever you open this up, you can see what you've currently got mapped. Then you've got the option button, the select config, and it's set to 0. And this is basically just setting up so that whenever you first open the node, it's going to start with all the 0 values. And then update labels. And so what this update labels functionality does is it takes 0 and 0 and it goes through, and every single one of these buttons here, it updates the label that's inside of it, the text inside of it, to say either what the event name is, or preferably what the display name is here, because it'll do a quick reference up to that collection of values. So read from global config, has values equals false for global action in global value functions button config. So I'm going to hop over to my global values and functions real quick. This is a singleton. So when you're playing the game, these are values that are currently or constantly available in the game. Once you edit those are persistent. So you see we've got this first function that creates an array with the same name over here, but one of my problems is, since it's not in the same node as that other one, and since that node opens and closes, all of those buttons that were in there go away whenever you close out of it. So this was the pain in the butt right here. But it's made so that since it's persistent, this is going to be the resting place whenever your configuration node isn't open, is inside of my global values and functions. And going back over to control config. So this global action is equal to that array, and for I in range 4, so from I equals 0 to I equals 4, it'll run through the array real quick, and if it's not null, and then if it's a string, if it's not empty, then has value equals true. And what it's doing is it's making sure that there's values that are in that array before it writes it over. So if it has values, then get out of this loop right here. If it does not have values, then just return, because there's nothing to write. Then the second part is copy the values from the global to the local. So for global action inside of this array that we're just looking at, for local action in that one, so breaking that one out into the individual pieces of that array. If action equals action, if this name is equal to that name in the other array, then for I in range 4, local action I equals global action I, and that's just going from 0, 1, 2, 3, although I should probably just rewrite that one so it's just 3 is equal to 3, because these ones are unchanging. So when first opened, it writes to column 3 if there's values. It sets the drop down to 0, and then it updates all the labels to either display preferably the display name, or at least the event that is recorded in there. Yeah. I'm going to skip this one for now, because all this one is just writing back to the global config. I'll go back to that one whenever it's first called in the code. So the way I imagine you would open this node up is you come in, it lands on 0. Maybe you want to take a look at a couple of different options as far as the layouts are concerned. So for that option button, when you click down on the option button and you select 0, 1, 2, or 3, the names that you're going to see are keyboard, keyboard number pad, gamepad, and then custom. That sets the index equal to either 0, 1, 2, or 3, and then it will, in the code, set map index equal to index, and then update the labels. So update labels for configs in buttons config, which is that array. If column index equals config, button equals that button, and then input value equals the config and column index, which is this incoming value. So if we're looking for 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then we go to input value. If it's null, say it's undecided or unassigned. If it has a value, then it goes to the get display by event or constant and then gives the input value, which is literally just a lookup. If it's an integer, which is never an integer, so skip that one. I tried to maintain a list of fix-ups, and that really wasn't super cool. So although this is here, this is kind of like an appendix, and I should probably just delete it. But it sends in the string that is one of these actions right here. And if value is equal to string, if value begins with input key event, so that's going to be a keyboard thing, or input subparts, split it from key code. This is just breaking that string apart, ultimately to get to like a shorter version of it. So I'm going to see if I can go ahead and put a stopper on this one and run scene. And so at this point, entry yeah, so I should have been looking for code. So it's looking for code 44. Yeah. So value. So key code 44 right here is the value that is saved inside the array. That's probably the first one, so that's probably going to be comma right here. So it's going to go from top to bottom, and it's going to take a look at this one right here. It's going to isolate whatever it is that it needs to know specifically what it's looking for up in this array, comma. It's going to find this value right here, and then it's going to return just that as the display value. Same for joypad events, and it's got those broken into two different items because the R2 and the L2 buttons are actually joypad motion events instead of joypad button events. And that was what led to some of the confusion as far as trying to map those items, because if I go back up here real quick, and then I slide on over to these guys, if you get just the number, you'll see that R2 has a code of 6, and oh, sorry, one more over, has an axis of 5, and this one has an axis of 4. So L2 happens to correspond, with the options button in the game. So that was one of those things that kind of lined up, which is why you had to keep track of both joypad motion and joypad button. 3102, 1059, 46, 4, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that was the main source of my dismay whenever this one was running. So we update the names, update the label, and return the value or whatever the string is going to be on that button. And button.text equals this one, and then I only want to have the apply button be enabled. Actually, no, that one not so much. So yeah, moving onward, skipping on down, get display constant, get that one. Whenever any of those buttons is pressed, then update input, and whenever any of those buttons is pressed, what I've got is, since I've got 14 different buttons, I've got a single function that each of these bad boys calls. So if I click on the light attack button, go over to the node, you can see I got the signal set to button up. So when that button is up, or the next button, or the next button, it calls to update input, and it sends itself so that it can be identified, and it sends 3, which is going to be the index, the mapping index. So update index receives the button, receives the column index. If it's not 3, it just returns, it ignores it. If waiting for input, then it also X's out. And that's to make sure you don't have 2 buttons activated at the same time. So once it confirms that you're trying to write for the custom and that you're not waiting on some other input, waiting for input is now true. And so that means that unhandled input can now receive information, because whenever this is false, it hops straight out of unhandled input. Current button equals the button that was just sent. So in this case, it's the light attack. Current index equals column index. Once again, 3. And then here real quick, it says, go ahead, press a button. Press something on the keyboard. Go ahead and give us an input. And then this one, I was having some kind of ghost in the machine situation, because like you'd enter an input and sometimes it would navigate to other stuff. So I think this kind of fixed it, but basically I'm putting this button in focus mode. I'm trying to ignore anything else or where moving the highlight could go. So the next function down, unhandled input event. Anything that you do, you move the mouse, you click the mouse, you press a button, you hit a keyboard or a gamepad, as long as it's connected to the computer, it's going to see these events. It's just whether or not it's going to listen when something is happening. So because I've already hit the button, and this is now true, we're not hopping out of there, and this is just a testing thing right here. Receive input event, and then if current button is not equal null, for config in buttons config. If the button that I sent is equal to the button inside of that array, so once again, whenever it finds the light attack button, it says config column 3 is equal to the event that came in, and it saves it as a string. Then also the current button text is going to be set equal to that event as a string, and this is just a test value saying, all right, cool, we saved it. Also, current button dot focus mode equals focus all, and current button grab focus. This one I went back to because for some reason whenever I pressed right in setting that map value on the gamepad, it would jump up 4 buttons. No clue why. Not a professional programmer. I'll just live with my failures. And then also resetting it, waiting for input is back to false, meaning that we're always going to be jumping out of this function whenever we get to it. And current button equals null because we've already done our other stuff. Current index equals -1, so there's not really a current index to write to. This is all a previously existing function that I moved somewhere else. And at this point, whenever it runs, we have entered custom values. Whenever we're on custom, they are now stored in the array. And when we click apply, input, update input. That's why. When we hit apply, because right now they just exist in an array and they are not applied to the game. So once we're happy with it, we would go and click the apply button. And what it's going to say is very quickly write it to the global configuration. So at this point, all these null values here have been replaced with the mappings that we want. And that first step inside of write to global, very similar to read from global, is make sure that every single one of these has a value, and then write everything from column named 3 to the global values and functions button config. Because whenever we're done running this one and we close this node, it's going to forget everything. It saves it to global values and functions, and then it says, all right, I've got a text variable called message, and I'm going to wait for something from apply mapping inside of global values and functions. I'm going to send that one a string that says the name of the node that this is running from. And just to wrap this one up, put a bow on it, if message is not equal to nothing, then it just prepares the message and puts into the pop-up dialog, and it says, hey, you're missing some stuff, and I'm trying to get it to line up on the items inside the menu. Opens, pops up, whatever. Also, the other time that the write to global config occurs is whenever you hit the exit button in order to save your work. It will write it to the global config. So say you've created a custom mapping, but you have not applied it anywhere. This just saves it to the global config for whenever you do want to apply that mapping. Super duper. Now we're on the last step before the demonstration. Global values and functions. This is my repository for addresses for nodes, persistent values, because a lot of my stuff is open briefly, then it goes away. So, apply mapping. It receives a string that's just the function that's calling it. The other function is going to be the save load function. If you guys want, I can do a video about that one, but this one's already been going for 8 minutes. By the way, don't sweat it. Ask me for the code. I'll put the code into the comments, because if you guys are doing better, then I'll do better. Okay, so this last function right here, 438, 535, 100 lines, plus helper functions. So what this says is it makes sure that we're in control config, and it takes a look at the current mapping index, which is 3, and it creates a list of missing actions. And then it says, I'm going to temporarily set this button data item equal to this whole array. And then we're going to create another variable and set it equal to column named 3 for this array right here. And it says if mapping is equal to null, or if it's a string and it's empty, then I'm going to append the name of this action to missing actions. And if missing actions is a size greater than 0, message is going to equal need to assign buttons for plus the list of items in missing action, and then it's going to return this message, and that's going to be the end of it. And that's how we're going to receive that warning inside of the control config, and it's going to stop us whenever we're trying to apply it, whenever we're missing some values. But if this is not empty, or I'm sorry, if it is empty, then it goes to the next step. For config in buttons config, action name equals config.action. So it's going to do once again another loop, and it's going to say I'm going to create these actions. So this list of actions right here is going to get written into input map action erase events. So it's going to first delete all the actions, and then it's going to rewrite them in a second. So stupid me, clear old mappings for all known actions, run through the whole list, action erase events. Step 2, apply new mapping. If current mapping index is 3, for config in buttons of config, var action name equals the action, input event equals 3. If input event is null, continue. And then event copy, input event variable. So if the type is a string, if the input event begins with either input event key or joypad or joypad motion, then it just recompiles the string into an action. So code equals parse key code from string, and this is that input event right here. If it's string, convert it back to an input event. Event copy equals event or input event key new event copy dot key code equals code. So this turns it into an input that it then saves as the action inside the game. Similar for input event joypad, input event joypad motion. All those ones are basically just to recreate those events. Real quick, because I'm stupid. Action name, input event. Alright, then once we get all the way through the end, if event copy is not null, input map action add event, here's the name which came from the top because I'm forgetful, and then this is event copy, and then that's just a check, or a confirmation. So action name, each one of these bad boys right here, action, player 1 attack, player 1 jump, and then event copy right here. This is just the recreated input event that came from that string that was the name. And this else right here, it's the same code, but what it does is I've got it set up so that if you've got the custom code, it clears everything else out. But if you've got, you revert back to the other one, the standard layouts, it'll institute all those in one go. So it's either everything customized or the original input events. This runs the same way. It runs through this whole part of the array right here. It finds the column, looks at the event, recreates the event after clearing those ones out. So although I'm breezing over this one, it's the same effective code on the top and the bottom. It just runs 3 times for 0, 1, 2, or 0, 1, and 2. And then yeah, I mean, we've got these other ones right here, which, whatever, I'll just go ahead and put it in the top comment. These are just helpers that help you recompile from the string into something that's usable for the input event. So parse key code from string, it busts it apart, it removes the front item, and then it just chops it up, puts it back together. Thank you, ChatGPT University. Input event, it's the full one. So if it begins with project settings, general, windowed. Okay, so it's already doing that one. So in this case, I should have just removed that stopper from earlier. Yank that off to the side real quick. Custom, just BS stuff. And I'm going to hit apply. Go over global values and functions. I'll put the stopper there. Okay, input event. Yep. Alright, now, so that corresponds with this guy, input event key. It's already an event, because I'm stupid, because that whole breaking the string apart was only when it's saved and loaded. Maybe I'll splice that one out, or maybe not. But ultimately, I'm going to stop filming for a second. Now I'm going to... Actually, no. So it's already coming back in as an event. Duplicate is true. Okay. Well, so all this stuff, I guess, was a precursor for if you guys... Or the next video, whenever we go to the save load one. Forget everything you know about those string break aparts. That's just because I save it to a JSON file. When it's coming back in, it becomes a string instead of an input. For every input item on the table, it just goes straight to this one. It duplicate, or input event dot duplicate is true equals event copy. Then it says, okay, let's save this one with this name here. So the action is player 1 attack, and I just save this one as a 7. Event copy. Yeah. And we're back. So just going to do a quick demonstration. So now that the game is running, I press 9 to go to the menu. I go to controller config, and you can see that I've got the option drop down actually populated with values. So 0, 1, 2, 3, keyboard, number pad, gamepad, custom. You can see that we've got the list of the actions in the game, and if you don't have a number pad, period or comma period slash KL colon LOP, those are over there on the right hand side of the keyboard. Space to power select WSAD, move up, move down. If you've got a number pad, then you can set it up like this. All these ones are standard. You know, you play the game and edit nothing, those ones are there. If you happen to have a gamepad, this one will probably work. Just gotta plug it in and take a whack at it. But if you want to do a custom layout, here you see we come here and it's unassigned. If I click apply, every single action needs to be filled in. So need to assign buttons for player 1 attack, jump, run, strong attack, defend, blah, 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 will not apply until done. So real quick, I'm gonna create some nonsense values. Well, kind of backwards values anyway. Whatever. You can see that the lineup wasn't really perfect, so it's actually got the event string instead of the event itself. Oh, whoops. Power select, up, down, left, right, and I hit apply. Gotta remove stopper real quick, and I think we're good. So if I exit the menu, the keyboard doesn't work, but the gamepad does. Roll, defend, all that stuff. I go back to the menu, and I go back to any of them 0 through 3, hit apply, exit, and now keyboard works again. Super duper. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. I don't know. Whatever. I put the code in the comments. Ask me. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it. I did this so that your lives should be easier trying the game out. Speaking of which, here's my shameless plug. In the video description is a link to itch.io. You can download and play this game for free as long as you got a Windows machine. So it would mean a lot if you were to head on over to itch.io and download a copy of both of the files for Uncanny Valley and try it out in the near future. Otherwise, thanks for being a great audience. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.